The Galactic Hegemony possessed what could generously be called an impressive lack of humility. After conquering 17 star systems, subjugating 43 species, and turning entire civilizations into footnotes in their military reports, they had developed the unfortunate habit of believing their own propaganda. This particular character flaw would prove most inconvenient. Emperor Axon the Magnificent, a title he had bestowed upon himself during a particularly productive afternoon of ego-stroking, ruled from a throne room that screamed compensating for something in 17 different languages. The chamber stretched for nearly half a kilometer, because apparently subtlety was for species without planet-killing weapons. Crystalline pillars twisted toward a ceiling lost in artificial mists, while holographic displays showed the hegemony's vast territories in real time, each conquered world pulsing with a satisfied blue glow that matched the Emperor's oversized cranium. The Emperor himself was a specimen that evolution had clearly designed during a coffee break. Standing 3 meters tall on 4 spindly legs, his bulbous head housed a brain that had mastered hyperspace mathematics, but somehow failed to grasp the concept of irony. 6 arms gesticulated dramatically as he held court, while his compound eyes surveyed his domain with the kind of serene confidence typically reserved for species moments before extinction. Fleet Admiral Grex approached the throne with the measured gait of someone who had learned that bearing bad news to megalomaniacs required exceptional care in presentation. His exoskeleton bore the scars of a dozen campaigns, and his mandibles clicked nervously, a tic that had developed after his 3rd promotion and showed no signs of improvement. "Your Magnificence," Grex began, employing the tone reserved for speaking to particularly unstable explosives, "we have received additional reports from the Outer Rim territory." The Emperor's attention drifted from a holographic display showing tax revenue projections, because apparently even galactic overlords had to deal with accountants. Yes, those mysterious disappearances you mentioned last cycle. Have our investigators determined which primitive species has been playing at piracy? Admiral Grex's mandibles clicked twice in rapid succession. "That is complicated, Your Magnificence. The missing vessels show no signs of conventional engagement, no debris fields, no distress signals, no evidence of weapons discharge. They simply vanish." "Vanish," the Emperor repeated, tasting the word like a fine wine that had turned unexpectedly sour. "Ships do not simply vanish, Admiral. They are destroyed, captured or stolen. These are the only options available to beings operating within the known laws of physics." The Admiral consulted his datapad with the enthusiasm of someone reading their own death warrant. The survivors from the few vessels that escaped described their attackers, well, they claimed to have encountered ships belonging to something called humans. The Emperor's 6 arms froze mid-gesture, creating a tableau that would have been comedic if not for the sudden drop in atmospheric pressure that occurred when he became truly irritated. "Human, Admiral, surely you jest. I am afraid the survivors were quite serious, Your Magnificence." They described bipedal creatures, averaging 2 meters in height, with only 2 arms and apparently functioning with a single brain hemisphere active at any given time. Emperor Axon's compound eyes focused with the intensity of someone trying to solve a mathematical equation using pure contempt. "Admiral, humans are a myth. A collection of ghost stories told by cargo haulers and mining crews to explain their own incompetence. They are supposedly a species so primitive they achieved spaceflight using chemical rockets, so backwards they communicate through mouth sounds, and so inefficient they require 8 hours of unconsciousness daily to function." The Emperor's voice rose to fill the cavernous chamber, echoing off surfaces designed specifically to amplify his pronouncements. "According to these tall tales, they cannot even photosynthesize their own nutrients, but must instead consume other organisms to survive. They allegedly possess only 2 genders, reproduce inefficiently, and have a lifespan barely exceeding 1 standard century. Most amusing of all, they supposedly fight wars using kinetic projectiles and explosive compounds rather than proper energy weapons." Admiral Grex's exoskeleton shifted uncomfortably. "Nevertheless, Your Magnificence, the missing ships are the victims of pirates, smugglers, or possibly that insurgent cell from the Vega sector." The Emperor interrupted, waving 4 arms dismissively while the remaining 2 adjusted his ceremonial crown. "What you are suggesting is that our vessels, armed with quantum torpedoes and protected by molecular shields, are being defeated by creatures who supposedly evolved from tree-dwelling primates and consider fermented fruit juice a recreational drug. The Admiral's mandibles clicked once more, a sound that conveyed approximately 3 different types of resignation. The survivors were quite specific about the human vessel's capabilities. "You're magnificent." They described ships that could apparently become invisible to our sensors. Enough. The Emperor's voice carried the finality of a collapsing star. "I will not have the hegemony's reputation tarnished by ghost stories. Deploy the 4th Battle Fleet to the affected system. Whatever third-rate pirate operation has been harassing our cargo vessels will be swiftly eliminated." "Your Magnificence, perhaps a more cautious approach." "Admiral, the 4th Battle Fleet consists of 200 vessels, including 3 dreadnoughts and a full complement of fighter squadrons. I seriously doubt that any force in the galaxy, mythical or otherwise, could threaten such a deployment." The Emperor's eyes gleamed with the confidence of someone who had never encountered a truly unpleasant surprise. "Besides, it will be educational for our crews to conduct live-fire exercises against whatever ramshackle confederation of criminals has been operating in that region." The Admiral's datapad chimed softly, indicating an incoming priority transmission. His mandibles clicked as he reviewed the message, and several of his facial chromatophores shifted to a pale yellow. The hegemony equivalent of someone suddenly needing to find the nearest refreshment facility. "Your Magnificence," he said carefully, "I am receiving reports that 3 more cargo vessels have gone missing in the same sector. The escort cruiser that was accompanying them has also failed to report." Emperor Axon's expression shifted through several different varieties of irritation before settling on smug satisfaction. "Then we shall simply have to demonstrate to these humans," he pronounced the word with the same inflection typically reserved for describing particularly unpleasant parasites, "that the Galactic Hegemony does not tolerate inconvenience." The Emperor gestured grandly toward the star charts displayed above his throne, where the affected region pulsed with an ominous red glow. "Admiral, inform Fleet Commander Vyth that his orders are simple. Proceed to the Outer Rim territories and eliminate whatever primitive forces are disrupting our commerce. And do remind him that I expect a full report on the interesting salvage opportunities these human vessels might provide." Admiral Grex's exoskeleton sagged slightly as he processed orders that felt distinctly like signing death warrants for several thousand crew members. "And if the fleet encounters unexpected resistance, Your Magnificence." The Emperor's laugh resonated through the throne room like the sound of crystal shattering in slow motion. "Admiral, we are dispatching enough firepower to sterilize a dozen worlds. I seriously doubt that any collection of pirates, rebels or mythical bipedal creatures could pose a meaningful threat to the hegemony's finest." As Admiral Grex departed to relay orders that would set in motion events of considerable inconvenience to everyone involved, Emperor Axon returned his attention to his tax report. After all, maintaining a galactic empire required attention to fiscal responsibility, and the Emperor prided himself on being a practical ruler. He had no way of knowing that in the depths of space, concealed by technologies that would have impressed his best scientists, observers had been monitoring hegemony communications with considerable interest. Nor could he have predicted that his dismissive attitude toward mythical humans would soon provide those same humans with a level of entertainment typically reserved for particularly amusing historical documentaries. But then again, that was the thing about being magnificently wrong. The realization only came after the consequences had already begun. Fleet Commander Vyth possessed the kind of military bearing that suggested he had been assembled from spare parts by committee. All angles and sharp edges, with the personality to his bridge crew operated with the precision of beings who had learned that inefficiency in the presence of their commander often resulted in assignments to particularly unpleasant asteroid mining operations. The 4th Battle Fleet stretched across several thousand cubic kilometers of space, a display of firepower that would have made smaller civilizations weep openly. 200 vessels arranged in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with the kind of polish that screamed, "We have nothing better to do than intimidate primitive." The 3 dreadnoughts anchored the formation like metallic mountains, each one capable of cracking a planet's crust during a particularly energetic afternoon. "Sensor sweep complete, Commander," reported Navigation Officer Dex, whose species had evolved from creatures that resembled oversized mantises with delusions of adequacy. "No contacts detected in the target zone." The sector appears completely uninhabited. Vith's 4 eyes focused on the tactical display with the intensity of someone trying to find flaws in a perfectly blank wall. Define uninhabited, officer. Are we detecting any artificial structures, energy signatures, or debris fields that might indicate recent activity? Negative, Commander. Our quantum sensors are operating at maximum sensitivity. If there were so much as a metallic asteroid larger than a cargo pod in this system, we would detect it. The area is completely empty. The commander's mandibles clicked once, a habit he had developed during his academy days and had never bothered to correct. Empty space does not destroy cargo vessels and military escorts, officer. Begin a detailed sweep of the system. Whatever primitive confederation has been operating here must have some form of base or staging area. What the hegemony's most advanced sensors failed to detect was the small problem of human engineering philosophy. Where most species developed technology that announced their presence with the subtlety of a supernova, humans had taken the peculiar approach of making their vessels as difficult to find as possible. The concept of stealth was apparently lost on beings who viewed warfare as a form of elaborate performance art. The human fleet positioned throughout the system operated on principles that would have baffled hegemony tacticians. Rather than magnificent formations and gleaming hulls, they preferred scattered deployments and surfaces that absorbed sensor sweeps, like particularly hungry black holes. Their ships hung motionless in space, running on minimal power, crewed by beings who had mastered the art of patience through millennia of hunting prey that could kill them if they made mistakes. Admiral Hannah Blackthorne, though her name would remain unknown to the aliens about to experience considerable inconvenience, watched the hegemony deployment through sensors that the enemy couldn't detect, recording tactical data with the enthusiasm of a researcher studying particularly interesting bacteria. Her bridge crew maintained the kind of professional silence that came from years of experience in situations where making noise could result in sudden violent death. 200 ships, murmured her tactical officer, reviewing the incoming data. They're not even bothering with escort patterns or defensive formations. It's like they're expecting a parade. The Admiral's expression carried the kind of dry amusement typically reserved for watching overconfident predators attempt to hunt something significantly more dangerous than themselves. Analysis indicates they're treating this as a training exercise. Quantum torpedoes armed molecular shields at full strength, but they're flying in parade formation. Back aboard the Hegemony flagship, Commander Vith was experiencing the first stirrings of what could generously be called concern. 3 hours of intensive scanning had revealed absolutely nothing except empty space and the growing certainty that something was fundamentally wrong with their intelligence report. Commander, announced Communications Officer Flux, whose nervous system apparently interpreted stress by changing colors in rapid succession. We are receiving priority transmissions from the cargo vessels currently in adjacent systems. They report detecting unidentified energy signatures on their peripheral sensors. What type of energy signatures? Unknown, sir. The readings are unusual. They appear and disappear without pattern, and our database contains no matching configuration. Vith's 4 eyes converged on the communication station with laser focus. Are these signatures consistent with any known weapon systems or propulsion technologies? Negative, Commander. The energy patterns do not match any recorded civilizations in our database. However, the readings are consistent with the signatures detected before previous vessel disappearances. The bridge fell into the kind of silence that typically preceded either great revelations or spectacular disaster. Vith's mandibles clicked twice in rapid succession as he processed information that violated several fundamental assumptions about how space combat was supposed to function. Deploy reconnaissance drones, he ordered, his voice carrying the careful control of someone trying not to acknowledge growing unease. I want full spectrum analysis of this entire system. Whatever is generating these energy signatures, we will locate and eliminate it. The drones launched with the precision expected of advanced military technology, spreading throughout the system like metallic seeds designed to bloom into tactical intelligence. Their sensors probed every asteroid, scanned every gas cloud, and analyzed every stray particle of cosmic dust with the thoroughness of beings who had never encountered anything they couldn't catalog and subsequently destroy. What they failed to detect was the fact that they were being systematically cataloged in return. Human sensors mapped every drone's capabilities, recorded their communication frequencies, and analyzed their tactical programming with the patient attention to detail that had made their species such successful persistence predators. The first drone disappeared 17 minutes after deployment. One moment it was transmitting detailed sensor data about a particularly interesting ice asteroid, and the next moment its signal simply ceased. No explosion, no energy discharge, no debris field, just silent. Commander Vyth stared at his tactical display as if intensive glaring could somehow restore his missing reconnaissance asset. Explanation Officer Dex. Unknown Commander. The drone's last transmission indicated normal operational parameters. There was no indication of system malfunction or external interference. Equipment failure. The probability of spontaneous failure in a Mark 7 reconnaissance drone is approximately 1 in 14 million, Commander. These units are specifically designed to operate in hostile environments. The second drone vanished 23 minutes later, followed by the third, fourth, and fifth in intervals that suggested either remarkable coincidence or deliberate action. By the time half the reconnaissance swarm had gone silent, even the most optimistic member of Vyth's crew was forced to acknowledge that something was hunting their technology with disturbing efficiency. Commander, reported Tactical Officer Prex, whose species had evolved the useful ability to remain perfectly calm while delivering apocalyptically bad news. We are detecting movement signatures throughout the system. Multiple contacts, bearing and velocity unknown. They appear to be surrounding us. Vyth's compound eyes focused on the tactical display, where red contact markers had begun appearing at the edges of sensor range. The contacts moved with fluid precision, taking positions that would have been textbook perfect if the textbooks had been written by beings who understood concepts like envelopment and tactical superiority. How many contacts? Difficult to determine, Commander. The signatures appear and disappear from our sensors. Estimated minimum, 50 vessels. Possible maximum unknown. For the first time since leaving the capital system, Fleet Commander Vyth experienced what humans would have recognized as the sudden realization that one might have made a serious tactical error. The empty system was revealing itself to be considerably less empty than advertised, and whatever was out there had been studying his fleet with uncomfortable thoroughness. The hunt, as it turned out, had begun. The hegemony forces were simply on the wrong end of it. What happened next would have been educational for students of military tactics, assuming any of them survived to take notes. The human approach to space combat bore roughly the same relationship to hegemony doctrine that a surgical scalpel bore to a construction demolition crew. Both achieved their objectives, but with vastly different levels of finesse. The first hegemony vessel to disappear was a destroyer positioned on the fleet's outer perimeter, selected with the careful attention to detail that characterized human military planning. One moment the ship was maintaining standard patrol formation, its crew presumably contemplating the tedium of hunting mythical creatures, and the next moment its transponder signal ceased broadcasting. Contact lost with Destroyer Nexus Prime, announced Communications Officer Flux, whose chromatophores had shifted to a particularly unattractive shade of panic yellow. Last transmission indicated normal operational status. Commander Vyth's mandibles clicked in rapid sequence, producing a sound reminiscent of dice rattling in a cup held by someone with terminal anxiety. Debris field? Negative, Commander. No explosion detected, no energy discharge, no emergency beacon activation. The vessel simply stopped existing from our perspective. The tactical display updated with the kind of helpful efficiency that made bad situations feel significantly worse. Where the destroyer's icon had previously glowed with reassuring blue, there was now simply empty space marked with a flashing red indicator that seemed to pulse in rhythm with Vyth's increasing heart rate. Possibility of technical malfunction in their communications array. Commander, the probability of simultaneous failure in primary communications, backup systems, and emergency beacons is mathematically negligible. The vessel has been destroyed or removed. The word removed hung in the bridge atmosphere like a particularly unpleasant odor. Warships were supposed to be destroyed in properly dramatic fashion, with impressive explosions and debris fields that provided closure. They were not supposed to simply vanish as if someone had pressed a cosmic delete key. Admiral Blackthorne observed the alien fleet's growing confusion with the satisfied expression of a chess master watching an opponent realize they had been maneuvered into an impossible position. Human tactical doctrine emphasized the psychological impact of uncertainty, and the hegemony forces were providing textbook demonstrations of how apex predators reacted when they suddenly found themselves classified as prey. Target acquisition complete on peripheral vessels, reported her tactical officer. Stealth drones have attached magnetic charges to hull sections of 7 additional ships, awaiting authorization for Phase 2. The Admiral's smile carried the cold precision of someone who had spent decades perfecting the art of controlled violence. Authorization granted. Begin systematic elimination sequence. Maintain stealth protocols throughout engagement. The second destroyer vanished 14 minutes later, followed by a cruiser, then a supply vessel, then 2 more destroyers in rapid succession. Each disappearance occurred with the same disturbing lack of spectacle. Ships simply ceased to exist from the hegemony perspective, leaving behind nothing but growing panic and the uncomfortable realization that traditional military responses were proving inadequate. Commander Veith's bridge had transformed into a showcase of barely controlled hysteria. Officers who had previously demonstrated remarkable competence in the face of conventional threats were now struggling with the cognitive dissonance of fighting an enemy they couldn't detect, predict, or apparently comprehend. New contact disappearance, Commander, reported Tactical Officer Prex with the enthusiasm of someone announcing the approach of their own funeral. Cruiser dominant force has ceased transmitting. No debris field detected. How many vessels have we lost? 11 confirmed, Commander. 3 additional ships are reporting system malfunctions that may indicate external interference. Veith's 4 eyes focused on the tactical display where red warning indicators had begun accumulating like symptoms of a particularly aggressive disease. His magnificent battle fleet was being systematically dismantled by forces that operated according to rules he didn't understand. All vessels, assume defensive formation Gamma 7. He commanded, his voice carrying the strained authority of someone trying to impose order on chaos through sheer willpower. Maximum alert status. Begin random evasive maneuver. The fleet's response would have been impressive under different circumstances. 200 vessels suddenly shifting into protective formation, shields maximized, weapons powered and ready, sensor arrays operating at peak efficiency. It represented the concentrated military might of a galactic empire, enough firepower to reduce entire star systems to cosmic debris. Unfortunately for the hegemony, defensive formations worked considerably better when the enemy was polite enough to attack from detectable direction. The human vessels materialized from apparent nothingness like sharks, emerging from murky water. Stealth fields disabled in perfect coordination, revealing ships that had been operating within weapons range for the past several hours, while remaining completely invisible to hegemony sensor. Multiple contacts materializing throughout the formation, screamed Navigation Officer Dex, his voice reaching octaves that his species typically reserved for mating calls or mortal terror. They're inside our defensive perimeter. What followed would have been fascinating to observe from a safe distance, preferably several star systems away. The humans struck with surgical precision, targeting specific systems rather than attempting wholesale destruction. Communication arrays vanished in brief flashes of coherent energy, propulsion systems went offline with mechanical efficiency, and weapon systems simply stopped functioning as if someone had politely asked them to take a brief nap. The hegemony crews found themselves aboard ships that had been converted from instruments of galactic dominance into expensive, heavily armored sculptures. Their vessels remained intact but completely helpless, drifting in space like metallic monuments to the dangers of overconfidence. Commander, reported Communications Officer Flux, whose chromatophores had shifted through several different varieties of terror before settling on a shade that suggested complete systemic failure. We are receiving a transmission from the unknown vessel. On speaker, Veith ordered, though his voice carried the hollow quality of someone who suspected they were about to receive news that would make their current situation seem pleasantly optimistic by comparison. The voice that emerged from the communication system spoke in perfectly clear hegemony standard, with an accent that suggested considerable familiarity with alien linguistics, and a disturbing amount of amusement. Hegemony Fleet, This is Admiral Blackthorne of the Terran Defense Force. You are hereby informed that your vessels have been disabled and your crews are now prisoners of war. Any attempt to restore ship functions or communicate with your command structure will result in immediate destruction of the offending vessel. A pause followed, filled with the kind of silence that typically preceded either enlightenment or complete psychological breakdown. Oh, and Commander Vaith, please inform your Emperor that humans send their regard. Emperor Axon the Magnificent was in the middle of reviewing quarterly mineral extraction reports when the universe decided to demonstrate its particularly cruel sense of humor. The throne room's communication array, activated with the priority signal reserved for either galactic emergencies or news so catastrophically bad that it required immediate Imperial attention. Admiral Grex materialized via hologram, his usual composed demeanor replaced by the expression of someone who had recently witnessed the fundamental laws of reality taking an unexpected coffee break. His exoskeleton bore stress fractures that suggested he had been gripping solid objects with considerably more force than recommended by manufacturer specification. "Your Magnificence," he began, employing the tone typically reserved for informing terminal patients about their prognosis. "We have received the final transmission from Fleet Commander." The Emperor's compound eyes focused with the intensity of someone trying to solve a particularly irritating mathematical equation. "Final transmission, Admiral? Surely you mean latest transmission. The 4th Battle Fleet was dispatched merely 2 standard cycles ago." "I am afraid not, Your Magnificence. The fleet has been neutralized." The word hung in the throne room's atmosphere like a particularly toxic gas cloud. Emperor Axon's 6 arms froze mid-gesture, creating a tableau that would have been amusing under different circumstances. His brain, that magnificent organ that had conquered star systems and subjugated entire civilizations, suddenly found itself attempting to process information that violated several fundamental assumptions about how the universe was supposed to function. "Define neutralized, Admiral." "The entire 4th Battle Fleet has been captured, Your Magnificence. 200 vessels including 3 dreadnoughts, taken without the loss of a single enemy ship. Our forces were systematically disabled by an opponent they could neither detect nor engage effectively." The Emperor's voice dropped to the register typically reserved for addressing particularly stupid furniture. "Admiral, are you suggesting that our most advanced battle fleet, equipped with quantum weaponry and protected by molecular shielding, was defeated by cargo pirates?" "Not pirates, Your Magnificence." Admiral Grex's mandibles clicked once, producing a sound like the universe clearing its throat before delivering a punchline. "According to Commander Vaith's final transmission, they were engaged by the Terran Defense Force." "The humans, Your Magnificence. The mythical species you declared non-existent has apparently taken exception to that assessment." Emperor Axon's brain performed what could generously be described as a complete system reset. The information presented to him possessed the same relationship to acceptable reality that antimatter possessed to a peaceful afternoon picnic. Humans were supposed to be ghost stories, primitive tales told by spacers with too much alcohol and insufficient imagination. "Play the transmission," he commanded, his voice carrying the hollow quality of someone who suspected they were about to receive education of the most unpleasant variety. Commander Vaith's image materialized in the throne room, projected with the crystal clarity that made every detail of his defeat uncomfortably visible. His 4 eyes darted nervously as explosions flickered in the background, and his previously immaculate uniform bore the kind of damage that suggested recent proximity to events of considerable violence. "Your Magnificence," Vaith began, his voice threading through octaves typically associated with acute psychological distress. "The 4th Battle Fleet has encountered hostile forces of unprecedented capability. The enemy vessels possess stealth technology superior to our detection systems and tactical coordination that suggests extensive intelligence gathering regarding our capabilities." The transmission flickered as what sounded like hull breaches occurred somewhere beyond the camera's range. Vaith's mandibles clicked rapidly before he continued. "The humans, and they are definitively humans, Your Magnificence, have systematically neutralized our entire fleet using precision strikes that disabled rather than destroyed our vessel. Their tactical doctrine appears designed to minimize casualties while maximizing psychological impact." Another explosion, closer this time, caused the transmission to waver. "Your Magnificence, I must report that these humans are not the primitive creatures described in our intelligence file. Their technology equals or exceeds our own in several critical areas, and their strategic thinking demonstrates a level of sophistication that suggests. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving Emperor Axon staring at empty air with the expression of someone who had just watched fundamental reality perform an unexpected tap dance routine. "Admiral," the Emperor said carefully, "please confirm that I have understood this correctly. Our most advanced battle fleet has been captured by a species that we declared mythical, using technology that supposedly does not exist, operated by creatures that allegedly evolved from tree-dwelling primates. That appears to be an accurate summary, Your Magnificence." The Emperor's 6 arms began gesturing with increasing agitation, creating patterns that resembled some form of interpretive dance dedicated to the concept of existential crisis. "How is this possible, Admiral? How does a species that communicates through mouth sounds and requires unconsciousness to function possess technology capable of defeating the Galactic Hegemony's finest?" Admiral Grex's response carried the weight of someone delivering news that would fundamentally alter the course of galactic history. "It would appear, Your Magnificence, that our intelligence regarding human capabilities has been incomplete." The understatement of the millennium settled over the throne room like fallout from a particularly energetic supernova. Emperor Axon the Magnificent, conqueror of 17 star systems, subjugator of 43 species, and supreme ruler of a galactic empire, found himself confronting the uncomfortable realization that he had managed to declare war on a myth that was considerably more real than his own competence. In the depths of space, human vessels maintained their positions around the captured hegemony fleet, their crews undoubtedly enjoying the kind of professional satisfaction that came from a job executed with textbook precision. The galaxy's newest players had announced their presence with the sort of dramatic flair that would be remembered for generations. As Emperor Axon slumped in his throne, processing the magnitude of his miscalculation, he could not have known that this moment would be preserved in human historical archives, under the remarkably accurate title, "The Day an Entire Galactic Empire Discovered That Myths Sometimes Fight Back." The universe, it seemed, possessed an even more sophisticated sense of irony than previously suspected, and humans, those supposedly mythical creatures, had just provided a practical demonstration of why declaring something non-existent without proper research was inadvisable when that something possessed starships, and a documented history of responding poorly to unprovoked aggression. There was, as it turned out, very much such a thing as a human. The Emperor's fleet had simply learned this lesson in the most educational way possible,